Welcome to the FMS 2014 Q4 release. My name is Chris Nolan. I have Chris Purcell on the line as well. Basically, you should have received an email with the release notes. If you did not, you can get those from your FMS portal front page tab, and that's the under the system updates you have FMS Focus Q4 2014 release, and then we also have the portal release notes here as well. If you can't get access to these, or if you're having trouble, please contact our support desk. We'll help you with that. Of course, we always encourage the use of the Java software that's located at the either the application login or the portal login itself on the applications tab. But if you have the software version on your various laptops or desktops, we do have the links available that you can go and update that for the software. If you don't update the software, it'll give you like a weird looking screen when you try to use some of these updates. So make sure you go in and do that. These links are also on the notes. If you want the slides from this presentation, please send me an email after the fact, and I'll email those to you. Requirements for these updates today are going to be access to our FMS GUI software and access to the FMS portal. All right, we're going to start with the portal release notes for the mobile portal. I'm going to move the FMS HR applicant portal section and the employee portal W-2s to the payroll section so that the people who don't want to listen to the focus payroll piece can go ahead and drop off. Basically, the mobile portal in the past has been enhanced, was only able to show documents from the dashboard itself. Once you enabled the dashboard reports as a mobile report, you could log in with your mobile device and see those reports. We've now updated that to include the documents, spool files, and employee portal and mobile sign-up tabs. So let's take a look at some screenshots of those. These are from the portal release notes. So basically, the documents mobile is going to look like this. So if your documents tab, you'll have access to all those documents when you log in with your mobile device. Same thing with the spool files. Same type of thing, looks similar to what you see already, but it's going to be kind of a miniaturized version. And then we've also have the employee portal access. So if you're using the employee portal where you can go in and get your W-2s and pay stubs off of our website through the Focus Payroll product, you'll have access to that as well through the the mobile, FMS mobile. In addition, if you are using the employee portal, the employees can now sign up for it through their mobile device. They don't have to wait in line at your kiosk or go to an actual PC somewhere. They can actually do that through their phone or through their tablet. All right, now let's move into the main software release. Basically, we'll start with General Ledger, and the big update is the GL monthly calendar. So in the past, you had to end your years and your months and periods based on the ending of your weeks. We were able to do like a January 1 to December 31 year, but we weren't able to make the months in between there end on their month end dates. That is now an option for you. It's kind of a restricted option. Basically, it's a 4-4-5 pattern for each quarter, so you have 13 weeks per quarter. But the weeks are not necessarily 7 days. Obviously, to get a month to start and end on its beginning and end date, we have to reconfigure the weeks accordingly. So some weeks may have 10 days, some may have 2 days. It just depends on how the calendar falls. So if you're comparing week to week, we don't recommend using a monthly calendar, because you're not going to be able to look at the same week last year and have the same number of days. But if you are comparing period to period and that's all that you're concerned about, then the calendar option might be a good fit for you. Basically, the setup is the same as the normal corporate calendars. So for you guys that are actually setting up your own calendars, when you go into the calendars menu and go to global to create your new calendar, instead of clicking add like you're used to doing, we now have the add monthly calendar link down here at the bottom left. You put in your GL code, year code, and go from there. And it's basically the same setup as a regular calendar. If that's something you're interested in as an apps client, We can help you with some of the calendar reconfiguration to get that done. If you're a BPO client and that's something you're interested in, please contact your FMS accountant and we will help you with that. All right, that's really it for the general ledger. The second updates we have to do with accounts receivable, and basically it's two things: accounts receivable invoice email and print by batch, and also the AR invoice reprint override. So basically what was happening with the AR invoices before, when you wanted to email an individual invoice, you had to go into each invoice and hit print or email, and it would go out. Now you can do that by batch. It's a lot more efficient. So when you go into accounts receivable and you go into AR invoice entry menu and your back office invoice batches or point of sale invoice batches, now you have your batch here, and we added a print button. So basically when you click print, it's going to bring up this option, and you can tell it to email based on the customer rules. So in our last quarter release, we talked about how to add emails to each individual AR customer. Well, now this will email based on those rules, or you can do all customers print only. So that will send out those individual invoices by email as a batch. The second fix that we did was the AR invoice reprint override. And basically what this one is, so under AR invoices and customer invoices, if you needed to go in and reprint a particular customer's invoice, before all it would do is print. So we're going to edit invoices, and now when you click the reprint button, it would just print. Now when you click reprint, you have the option to print, email, do not email, or email only. So you have that override capability that you didn't have before. So we've added that in. That's it for the updates to the accounts receivable. We don't have any questions yet, so Chris, I guess we'll move on. Okay, at this point, that covers all of the GL, the AR type fixes. Everything from this point forward is going to be Focus Payroll or Focus Human Resources related. We do have some bug fixes that are listed at the back of the notes. We are going to go over those at the end of the seminar, so if you want to hear about those, you can stay on the line. If not, you can just read through those yourself when you get to that point of the notes. But at this point, we're going to go to the Focus Payroll. So you guys, if you don't want to listen to the Focus Payroll product updates, you can drop off here at this point. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to jump back to the applicant portal for human resources. So in the past, for those people who are using our human resources module or would be interested in using that, I'll pull it over here. We have the applicant tracking menu, and you would go through and do an applicant application, and then you have to go through and type in all the information, etc. This was being done at the client level, so you guys are doing this yourself. What we've done now is created basically, let me find the correct browser here. Nope, it's not it. There it is. We've created an online version of that same information. So similar to going to like a department store and you see the kiosks there that people can sign in and apply. Now you can go here and do the same thing. So your potential applicants can sit down and go ahead and fill out all that information, save you a lot of time. So put in a social security number. Hit continue, and that's going to verify based on your database whether or not that social is already in the system. So it says successfully validated, so on and so forth. At this point, all of the information here is straight out of our human resources module. So they can go in and pick the position that you're hiring for and fill in all the information for you, so you don't have to go back and do all that yourself. It's just save a ton of time for you guys. But basically, once that's done, they can review that, and then save it, and it goes right into your human resources module in the applicant portion. Then you can take it from there as far as interviews and hiring process and things like that. Okay, that's the applicant portal. The second thing we're going to talk about is the W-2s on the employee portal. We'll look at the actual the output first, and then we'll look at kind of how we get there. Basically, each individual employee, once they log into the employee portal, has the options of both looking at their pay stubs and viewing those, printing those, saving them, whatever they want to do. And now we have the W-2s tab as well. So again, they can go in here and click view, and they'll pull up their W-2 along with the instructions, so they can print this, all 3 pages with the instructions, and they're ready to go to file their taxes. Again, this is available as an option for this year or for 2014 year end if you're using the employee portal. For 2015, you would have to inform all their employees that they're not printing W-2s, so they can get that from the employee portal if they're using it. Okay. All right. So let's look at the actual in the system where you can push those out to the employee portal itself. So if you're utilizing the employee portal under payroll and end of year processing and W-2 processing, we've added this button here at the bottom called Portal Publish W-2s to Employee Portal. So basically, once all your W-2 work is complete, you can go in here and push it out to their portal, and they can go get them. It's really very simple. Publish active year. All right, the next step is the W-2 extract enhanced proration record interpretation. So basically, and Chris, jump in here and help me with this if you don't mind. This one's pretty complicated as far as the calculations go.
There's 2 scenarios that we enhance for the proration records. The first is where an employee changes more than one tax code at a time. For example, if they're moving from a state with multiple local tax codes to a state that doesn't have any local tax codes, maybe a tax local, tax other. And the other scenario is employees just changing a local only code or tax other, just one code at a time that's not essentially the state tax code. So scenario 1 is, let's say, for example, an employee moves from Pennsylvania to Maryland. Pennsylvania is a state with taxes on the local level. Therefore, when an employee moves local taxes, they're changed in addition to the state tax code. This scenario created multiple sets of proration records in the past. Each entity is indicated with the entity code on the proration screen, on the employee proration screen. The entity sets will essentially be identical. It's simply a snapshot of the earnings, taxes, and deductions at the time that the tax code was changed. However, one entity set is created each time, each tax code that's changed. Therefore, if multiple tax codes are changed at the same time, multiple entity sets are created. So prior to this release, the W-2 extract was incorrectly adding wage and tax amounts together for these entity sets in the employee proration records. So, for example, if an employee moved again from PA to Maryland, the state and local tax codes were changed. The employees left with 2 proration entity sets, one S for state code and one L for local. Each set contained one record for each earnings, tax, and deduction for which the employee had a quarter-date, year-to-date amount greater than 0. The W-2 extract program was adding these wage and tax amounts together to create a PA W-2 record that was essentially greater than or higher than what it should be. The Maryland W-2 record was also affected because the PA was wrong, and then the Maryland is essentially calculated of what's left over from the year-to-date after the prorations are subtracted out. Because the PA W-2 was doubled, the Maryland W-2 is essentially getting nothing left over, which results in a negative W-2, or in some cases a 0 or negative W-2. So the W-2 extract program will now avoid adding wage and tax amounts together if the entity sets have the same state tax code. So if the state tax code of the entity sets are the same, it will now properly calculate the proration for the W-2 with the correct wage amounts and tax for each bucket, i.e. the federal, Social Security, Medicare, all the taxes along with wages, and any extraneous miscellaneous buckets like the box 12, box 14 buckets. All of this, of course, results in then the second W-2 being calculated properly, again, because it's the difference between the proration W-2 and the year-to-date buckets. So then the second scenario is a much simpler one, where an employee is just changing a local tax code, a local city or other. Let's say they're just moving within a state from one locality to another, one county to another, for example. So again, Pennsylvania being a state that has multiple tax codes, for this payroll taxes, this type of payroll change requires only the tax local code to change. So prior to this release, again, the W-2 extract program was incorrectly creating a separate W-2 with the proration wage and tax amounts for each bucket. So for example, they would, if they moved, they would essentially get two Pennsylvania W-2s where it was splitting the state wages and the federal wages just because they only move localities. So obviously that's not necessary. We want to give them one full W-2 with the federal and tax amount, federal and state tax amounts and wages, and just a separate W-2 with the local tax code on there, where they started, and then a W-2 for the other local. So we enhanced the W-2 extract program to prohibit splitting the wage and tax amounts for those codes that have not changed while creating a separate W-2 with only the wage and tax amounts for the tax code that did change. So in the example I'm talking about, the employee would receive one W-2 with full year-to-date federal, state, Social Security, Medicare taxes, and a local wage and tax W-2, and then a separate W-2 with the second local wage and tax amount.
The third thing surrounding the W-2s is the utilization of the second local tax line. We've got an example of that right here. In the past, what happened was if you had two local taxes, you were getting one local tax printed here and then getting a separate W-2 for that second local tax. We've added a second line here, so now you can print both local taxes on the W-2. If you have more than two, though, the second W-2 page will be printed. So by default, it's going to go to this double line. You can override that and stick with the old method if you so choose, if that affects you. All right, the next one is the third-party sick pay recap form. And again, Chris will jump in on this one because he's an expert on this.
So, beginning with tax year 2014, employers are now required to report IRS Form 8894, third-party sick pay recap, if the sick pay is reported on the W-2s filed under the name and EIN of a third-party agent or insurer. So this form is really meant to bridge the gap between the 941 wages and tax balancing to the W-2 wages and tax. Because obviously these wages are filed under the employer's 941 but not the W-2s, so they aren't equal. And so this form is really meant to bridge the gap. One complication is when FMS clients have employees where the employer paid tax on the third-party sick pay wages as well as employees where the agent or insurer paid tax on the third-party sick pay wages. So in this scenario, only the W-2 extract records where the taxes were paid by the agent insurer are to be reported on this recap form. Also, the agent insurer W-2 records should not print on the Focus payroll W-2 or any reports, and they should be excluded from the EFW2 file. So essentially what we did was we created a new print flag. On the third page of the W-2 extract screen, the current functionality essentially when this field is S, the W-2 extract records are flagged as a third-party sick pay W-2. What we did was we created a new value called A for third-party agent or insurer. The W-2 extract program has been enhanced to automatically flag, it hasn't been enhanced to automatically flag agent insurer W-2 records. So essentially users will need to manually set or key in the W-2 record from the third-party sick pay, from the third party, you get a report or something from your third party, and you want to key those W-2s into the W-2 extract and then manually flag them with an A on the print flag. So then essentially on the W-2 menu, the statutory tax reporting menu from the year-end processing menu, you'll click on the third-party sick pay recap form. The form simply just prompts you for a client number range as well as details or totals, and when it runs, it essentially just lists each employee with a column for each box on the 88, 89, 22 with totals at the bottom. So it's going to find all of the W-2 records that are flagged with an A for third-party sick pay agent, and it's going to gather up all those wages and tax and put them on this report. And then you will simply copy them over to the form manually. Right now there's no electronic filing for this form, it's just a simple paper form. So you can just copy the totals at the bottom of this new third-party sick pay recap form onto the IRS Form 8892.
All right, the next thing is the non-voluntary deductions check for minimum wage update. This is pretty important, especially for you guys that have deductions that you require your employees to pay. For example, uniforms or drug tests, things like that. Basically, the deduction option needs to be set up. So under system maintenance, deductions, and then whatever deduction that you have, whether it's drug test, uniforms, etc., that you force your employees to pay. That option can be flagged on page 2 here, non-voluntary deduction, check state minimum wage. So basically the example that we're using is if an employee is paid $7.75 for 30 hours, his gross wages are $232.50. In this example, the state minimum wage is $7.25. So if a non-voluntary deduction of $20 is taken, that would put their earnings at $212.50. Divide that by the 30 hours, and it gives them an hourly rate of $7.08, which falls below the state minimum wage. Therefore, that deduction cannot be taken according to the Fair Labor Standards Act. So if you have this deduction needs to be flagged. We've gone through in the system and updated by state all of the minimum wages for 2015. So that whenever you run this for your particular state, it will it'll match that up and take this deduction or not take the deduction. The other thing that you can do to ensure that they get taken is to set it up by employee and put a deduction balance in. So for example, we'll use Michael Scott here. If it's $50 and the $150 is what the total is, if you put the $150 in here, then it will take a lesser amount until it gets to that balance. Or you could put the 150 in here and it would keep trying until it could actually take it. But in some cases, your employees probably would never be able to, so you might want to break that up for them. So just keep that in mind as you have these involuntary deductions. Chris, is there anything else on that I should cover? Okay. So that's pretty important. That probably affects everybody on this call. All right, the last thing on the Focus Payroll is the enhancements to the PPACA Healthcare Reform Report. I'll show you, kind of remind everybody where that is. Well, I always click the wrong thing. There it is. So under Employee Reporting, we have the Healthcare Reform Report. This report has now been made available on the OIS menus as well. So if you're a BPO client, you have the option to run this report as well.
As new regulations go live as part of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, We're continuing to listen to the clients and assist with compliance for the new law. So what we've done in the latest round of enhancements to the PPACA average hours report is kind of what I like to call it. We've done about 7 enhancements to it. So the first one is the CSV extract file can be turned off. So that we added a flag at the bottom of the screen that says create extract, and you can essentially uncheck that to just generate a report only. We added the report to the online in-store menu for OIS users. It will not run the CSV extract file. It will generate a report only, but it's located on the employee reporting menu for online in-store users, OIS users. New employment statuses have been added to the report, so instead of a checkbox to include full-time employees, we created a drop-down box where you can select individual employment statuses or groups of statuses. So all part-time, our new employment statuses for part-time with benefits, part-time seasonal, part-time student, as well as all statuses and full-time. When including full-time employees, this was just a little bug. It was including every terminated employee ever, so we limited to just those with a termination date in the reporting date range. So if you include inactive employees, it's only going to show you those that were termed in the date range. For the employee, the pay rate that we use on the report, if the employee had got a raise or any change in rate during the reporting period, we will use the lower of the hourly rates. And that is if there's an hourly rate date of change in the system. If that date falls in the reporting pay period, the reporting period, we will use the lower of the 2 hourly rates. We created a filter for the minimum pay periods. There's actually kind of 2 new prompts used in conjunction. So essentially, you can enter a minimum pay period amount and then choose, you enter a pay period amount and then you choose whether it's above the minimum pay periods or below the minimum pay periods. And essentially for the pay period, for the employee selection, we will either choose employees with more or less pay periods than the value that you provide on the screen. So for example, if you're only looking for employees that have 26 or more pay periods, you can put in the minimum pay periods of 26 and it will filter out anyone with less. And then finally, we created a prompt for the pay period count method. There's only one method type currently in place, and that's all pay periods after the hire date. But in the future, we're going to add additional count methods for clients, for example, that they don't want to start counting pay periods until the employee's first full month of hire. And again, that's interpretation of the PPACA law. So in the future, we can add a pay period count method to start on first full month. And then essentially when we count the pay periods to print on the report and for the new filter that we have, it won't start counting until the employee's first full month of employment.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Alright, so now moving on, we're going to talk about some of the bug fixes that we did. I've kind of highlighted some of the most important ones, but again, the whole list, there's 2 or 3 pages of bug fixes in the notes themselves, so if you want to check those out, it may be something that affects you. But basically, under the general ledger, there was an overprinting issue that was corrected on the retail inventory reconciliation report. The result of this issue was that gross profit percentages were looking incorrect. That's been fixed. The standard journal entry program, import program, was allowing unbalanced entries to post. Essentially, the issue is with a stat account being used as a financial account in the interface, and the program would accept that. This puts the entry out of balance from a GL point of view. We've added logic to reject financial amounts or cost amounts that are in statistical accounts that are flagged as statistical accounts in the system. In addition, with the SRW extracts, this doesn't affect you guys that are BPO, but during an SRW extract purge, if a user attempted to run a new extract, the screen would crash and a program message was displayed. That's been enhanced to prohibit users from entering the screen during a purge, so it eliminates that issue. And then also, if multiple users run the SRW extract with export options, the shared exports one file was being overwritten by subsequent users. That bug's been fixed by giving each user their own temporary exports one work file. So now that's not going to be a problem anymore. And then we had a dashboard extract issue. When the dashboard extract is run and the user selects only the company totals level, the dashboard report tree was missing the value for company name. The company name is used as a link for the dashboard tree for the users to click on, and then would view the data on that level. Because that field was blank, they were unable to access data on the company level, but that's now been fixed. So you can click on the company level and get that data if you ran a report at the company level. So fix that. Under billbacks, basically customer totals have been added to the deal processing report. And then there's been 3 things on the pre-pass report that's been enhanced. You can check those out in the notes if you're using the billbacks module. Under accounts payable, for ACH emailed remittances, it actually said AP ACH remittance form in the line, but now that since we've added updates to allow email for other types of remittances, not just ACH, we've taken the ACH out so that it's accurate information. And then the last 2 bug fixes around accounts payable had to do with the AP Recon report. In the past, you would sometimes get a timing issue if something posted in a later period that should have been in the current period based on a key data entry error or something like that. It was causing an AP Recon to be out of balance. Those issues have been corrected, so your AP Recon should not be out of balance based on timing issues in the future. Those 2 fixes are detailed there in the notes as well. Under accounts receivable, quite a few things have been added. Under the display customer statements by date screen, basically, if users filtered that statement list by prompting for customer, the reprint option wasn't actually generating the spool file. That's been fixed. Also, the delete option didn't display the delete AR customer statement screen. Those both have been fixed there as well. On billbacks under display deal details, it's a tongue twister. Basically, the display invoice details have been added so you can see that all in one place. Under the AR back office payments, we've added the previous customer function. That's also similar to under AP, we have the previous vendor function there when you're keying in invoices. So that way you don't have to keep looking up this customer ID. You can just hit previous customer, it'll pull that in for you. And then that's also been added to the add deal under billbacks. Under focus payroll, the bug fixes that we've taken care of, mainly under display earnings and multipliers. It looked like you could check the boxes there under display. Now those have been closed so that you can't do that, so it's not confusing. Voided pay stubs have now been removed from the employee portal, so if there was a pay run that got messed up for some reason and you had to void a range of checks, those pay stubs won't show up on the employee portal, just the correct pay stubs. If any of you are affected by a 7-digit federal year-to-date tax on your pay stubs, that's no longer going to be an issue. That's been fixed. So your full 7 digits of federal taxes are now shown. And then basically when an employee has a deduction that's not taken, gross to net will now print a message on that on the error report. It'll indicate the employee and the deduction that was not taken, so you can have a record of that. And then for the EH benefit type, the arrears counter will now decrement those. There are quite a number of functions to authorize based on these things, and they're on the last page, page 17 of the release notes. Basically, if you need help authorizing the functions for these new things, just give us a call. Give the help desk a call. And the information is here. This is my information. I'm Christopher Nolan. But the phone number, 877-435-9400, is for everybody at FMS. If you're trying to get the help desk, just change that 1405 out to a 2, and you'll get right to our help desk, and they can help you with any of the technical setups on this. If you're a BPO client and you're trying to get access to some of those things, just contact your accountant, and we'll take care of that for you. We'll go ahead and sign off today. Again, just contact me if you'd like to have the slides or if you have any other questions. Chris, thank you for your help today. Appreciate it.